I'm so glad to see you here. My name is Monisha Amani. I'm an assistant dean in the undergraduate program office here in the Melanne School of Business. I would like to say welcome to Georgetown University for those of you who are coming from out of town. I just wanted to also extend a warm welcome to students who are visiting from outside of Georgetown here with us. Some of the students or universities that will be represented here, some might be here, some might be coming a little bit late if they're sleeping right now. We will have students representative from American University, Case Western Reserve University, Emory University, Goizueta Business School, Indiana University Kelley School of Business, Miami University, Montgomery College, Ross School of Business, University of Michigan, the Catholic University of America, the George Washington University, my alma mater, University of Arizona, Eller College of Management, University of Minnesota, and University of Washington. So welcome all. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you my boss, our undergraduate dean, Dr. Nurian Sharp. Dr. Sharp is the Senior Associate Dean and the Director of the undergraduate programs here at the McDonough School of Business. She joined McDonough in July of 2009, and ever since her arrival, she has revolutionized the McDonough undergraduate program in many ways. In her role, she oversees the advising curricular, co-curricular aspects of the program. She is responsible for the creation of new global programs, and she's done a wonderful job in terms of enhancing the curriculum of many of our majors. She's also done a great deal with development of partnerships with both profit and nonprofit institutions, and our students are very much involved with those initiatives. And another thing, she's also very much involved with donor development, and her efforts are really paying off in terms of scholarships, especially for students who want to study abroad. So because of her efforts, we actually had a handsome amount last year that we gave as a scholarship to students. Another very important thing that she has done since her arrival is the creation of Bagel with the Dean. So for those of you who are not Georgetown students or not McDonough students, each Thursday morning, our students will get free bagels, juices, and coffee and tea, and get an opportunity to speak and network with Dean Sharp, and also meet the staff in the undergraduate program, and come with questions if they want to. In addition, she has been responsible for the overseeing and creation of first-year seminar programs, Entrepreneurship Fellows Program, and many global initiatives that I mentioned earlier. Dean Sharp has a PhD from University of Virginia in systems engineering. She has my respect, I can tell you that. And she's not only an effective administrator, but also she's an educator and a scholar. Please give a warm welcome to Dean Nurian Sharp.
Thank you, Monisha. I think I can retire soon. Good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome you this morning to our inaugural Women in Business Conference. As any of you know who've ever planned and executed a project and a program, nothing is possible without teamwork. So first, I would like to start by thanking the co-chairs of the Planning Committee, Assistant Dean Monisha Amani and Assistant Dean Nicole Houle, and their entire Planning Committee. Without their extraordinary energy and efforts, today's program would not be possible, so thank you, both of you. I know you've worked extremely hard. David Thomas, Dean of the McDonough School of Business, who's been here now, this is his third year at Georgetown, had planned to be here to welcome you all this morning, but had to depart for the Middle East a bit early yesterday. Before I introduce our opening speaker, I would like to say just a few words. Our office and our team began planning this event at least 1 year ago. Our motivation was a desire to emphasize the progress that women have made in all areas that drive our global economy: finance, management consulting, public policy, marketing, education, media, and government. It is our hope that today you will find role models in extraordinary women who've bravely served as pioneers, explorers, drivers, innovators, facilitators, and leaders in their respective disciplines and careers. What I continue to learn, and I hope that you will realize today from their stories throughout the day at each of the panels and speakers that you will hear, that each woman's path and each woman's goals are different. And each woman has the choice and the power to make her own decisions as she crafts and creates her own unique contribution to our global society and economy. Today, we are privileged to have with us Ambassador Melanne Verveer. Ambassador Verveer will begin with brief remarks, and then we will move to the stage where we will engage in a conversation about her experiences. In 2009, President Obama nominated Ambassador Verveer to be the first U.S. Ambassador at Large for global women's issues at the Department of State. Ambassador Verveer spent 4 years working with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to coordinate foreign policy activities relating to the political, economic, and social advancement of women. Today, she is the director of Georgetown's newly established Institute for Women, Peace, and Security. Prior to her role at the State Department, Ambassador Verveer was chair and co-founder of Vital Voices, an international NGO that supports and invests in emerging women leaders. Prior to Vital Voices, she served as assistant to the president and chief of staff to the First Lady in the Clinton administration. She also led the effort to establish the President's Interagency Council on Women and was instrumental in the adoption of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000. Prior to the time at the White House, Ambassador Verveer served in numerous leadership roles in public policy organizations. Ambassador Verveer has a bachelor's and master's from Georgetown University. She is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and holds several honorary degrees. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including the U.S. Secretary of State's Award for Distinguished Service. So please join me in welcoming Ambassador Verveer.
Well, thank you, Norian, and welcome to all of you. You early risers deserve some kind of extra credit, I think. I know what it's like on a campus at this hour. It's pretty quiet, and here you are. It's a real pleasure for me to be here, and I want to thank everyone who was engaged in bringing this conference to this place today, for all the leadership here at the business school. I've spoken to Norian several times over many, many months, and I know how deeply committed she has personally been to making this opportunity available to all of you. I want to give you a little bit of the framework of where we are today in terms of women's economic participation globally, what we know from the data and research, because I think that will give you a perspective of where we need to go, what we need to do, and what is happening globally and how you fit into all of that. Yesterday, the World Economic Forum released its annual gender gap report. It measures the gap between men and women in a given country on 4 metrics: health, access to education, economic participation, and political empowerment. And why does this organization of some of the highest business leaders in the world put out an annual gender gap report? Because in those countries where the gap between men and women is closer to being closed, and in nowhere is it closed, even on those 4 metrics, but as that gap closes, those countries are far more economically competitive and far more prosperous. Talent matters, and tapping the talent of all of our people, women and men, has huge payoffs. Now, what the WEF found this year in this 2013 report is the gap has narrowed slightly in most countries, about 80%. The Scandinavian countries continue to lead. The United States is 23rd of about 135 countries that have been part of this survey. We are making collectively greater progress in access to education, but we're still only about 60% at economic participation. One of the big challenges the world over is how do we grow our economies and how do we create jobs? And a lot of you, as you mount the ladder in your academic careers, are going to be grappling with these kinds of issues. Secretary Clinton, at the first APEC Women and the Economy Summit that took place a couple of years ago, the United States worked to put this issue on the APEC agenda, and that's the Asia-Pacific region and the 21 economies that comprise perhaps the most dynamic part of the world, the Asia-Pacific, China, and the United States among them. And yet nowhere on that agenda was really a focus on women and the economy. And what she said was, to achieve the economic expansion we all seek, we need to unlock a vital source of growth that can power our economies for decades to come. And that source of power is women, the world over. Christine Lagarde put it another way as she focused on inclusive growth. The evidence is clear, she said. When women do better, economies do better. And just a couple of weeks ago, the IMF released, under her direction, the first of its kind report for the fund called Women, Work, and the Economy, which lays out the macroeconomic gains that come from gender equality. In other words, gender equality equals smart economics. Another study, the third billion that Booz & Company released a year or so ago, showed that 1 billion women are poised to make an enormous contribution to the economies around the world. They are, or could be, a market segment big enough to rival China or India, if they are empowered. So today there is a growing body of research, of data, of studies that underscores the vital nature of women's economic activity. And I hope that in the years to come, more effort will be made, hopefully by some of you, to continue to grow that body of information on women's entrepreneurship, employability, with disaggregated data based on gender, so we know exactly where women stand and what they are doing. The case for unlocking the potential of women and including them more fully in the economic lives of our nations begins by acknowledging what women are already doing to drive economic growth. The Economist points out that women's economic participation in the developed countries, so countries like ours and Europe, etc., during just the past decade has added more to global growth than China. That's a lot of growth, and that's women's economic participation. Some of you may have read poring over your history books about Rosie the Riveter, who was the emblem of women who went into America's factories during World War II. And she helped, as they all worked, to manufacture the needed to send the greatest military in history into battle. And her motto is one I'm sure you've seen the world over, every place you've gone. It's got Rosie on that big poster. And what does she say? We can do it. Foreign Policy pointed out that the economic history of the last 50 years in the United States has been the entrance of the female half of the population into the workplace. So you are part of this continuum. Women started working out of necessity, and many still do. They stayed when the jobs became careers. They were hired in a hunt for diversity, and they were kept because of their talent. The result has been a world-changing revolution. Today, women are not just good for the bottom line, they're fundamental to bringing nations out of poverty, and they just might be the future of work. After World War II, the United States saw a significant increase in GDP largely due to women's work outside the home. So rightly, investing in women is becoming a core business strategy, yielding quantifiable returns. We also know that women yield a double dividend with their work. Women's income is usually poured into education, into health, into the kind of things that raise up the standard of living around the world. And that is important. And it's interesting if you look at the high-level panel that has been studying the Millennium Development Goals, which reached their termination point in 2015. A very prestigious panel came together to say, where do we go past 2015? And what's different about their recommendations in several ways is a focus on economic participation and the role of the private sector in all of that as well, as a way to lift large numbers of people out of poverty. The other interesting aspect here is the growing purchasing power of women. Women control trillions of dollars in purchasing power. According to the Boston Consulting Group, 28 trillion next year alone. And that is to grow so that women in the next few years will be responsible for about 2/3 of all consumer spending worldwide. So it is hard as you continue to see these studies and this data accumulate how you can negate or marginalize or not pay sufficient attention to the role of women in economic progress. And one other area that is one that is getting increased attention because of the role that small and medium-sized businesses play, including in our own country. They are accelerators of GDP. Women-owned businesses, according to Goldman Sachs and others, are accelerators in this place. But any of you who have been in a family that has started a business or part of an SME in some way know what the data shows again, that women face particular obstacles to growing their business. Obstacles to access to credit, a big one, access to markets, access to the training and networks that they need to really prosper. Leadership opportunities. In some countries, discriminatory laws and regulations and customs. Some places women can't own property or inherit. All of these hold back the kind of progress women can make, their families can make, and indeed their countries can make. So when I was at the State Department and continuing that, one of the big focuses has been on 21st century statecraft. That is the role of the economy in global affairs. And increasingly, that role the world over includes women by virtue of just looking at what the evidence shows us. It's an evidence-based argument. And to that end, in multilateral settings like APEC, we looked at the statistic for the Asia-Pacific region. The UN says that that region, our region, is losing $90 billion a year in GDP growth because the potential of women is not being tapped. So this is staggering in terms of what it represents. And whether it's in Asia-Pacific area, in South America, how women tap trade agreements the world over, all of this is critically important, as is the role that we can play in ensuring that institutions like OECD, the Economic and Development Cooperative Organization, are producing the kind of information that is essential to making good policy and for businesses and other actors to take advantage of. I just want to mention, since Norian mentioned the new role that I have at Georgetown, which is running a new institute for women, peace, and security. And I hope that there will be increased ways for the business school and for other parts of the university besides the School of Foreign Service to be engaged, because one of the key reasons that countries after conflict don't move to stability and peace and prosperity is because the lack of economic opportunity that never gets quite in there and never is part of the negotiations on the peace tables or the policies that follow. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this whole area of women's economic participation in countries in conflict, coming out of conflict, undergoing tremendous political upheaval, like today in the Arab awakening countries. So that's an area that I hope will get more attention as all of us go forward. I want to mention one thing about diversity, because it is something I know on your minds, and it is something that we really need to pay a lot of attention to. We do know that the best ideas and innovation flourish in a diverse environment. Diversity is necessary and vital to a healthy business environment, to a healthy environment of any kind, frankly. This is an area that is constantly being discussed. I'm sure many of your speakers, particularly those who have leadership roles in the private sector, will raise it today. We often call it the glass ceiling, or the sticky floor, or as a friend of mine says, that thick layer of men that keep women from progressing in ways that we have by virtue of experience, by virtue of credentials, by virtue of the kind of good work that goes on in many institutions and in companies. Women's advancement still is not taking place in high levels of management, on boards of directors of companies. These have become very big issues, and I'm sure that here in the business school, you will hear and you will participate in many of the discussions about them. So no matter how much women seem to be leaning in, we're still not there in terms of the kind of progress women should be making, certainly in upper management and beyond, based on the kind of good work, talent, and credentials that women hold more and more. I want to say another word, because hopefully some of these topics will come into your work throughout the day. On CSR, you hear a lot about it, this whole notion of corporate citizenship, and I want to thank any representatives of the sponsors here today, enlightened as they are about investing in women's economic participation. But today, more and more companies are moving beyond CSR. These companies are adopting global women's strategies, and they are weaving them into their brand, so that when you think of an Estee Lauder or an E&Y or other companies, much of that direction is not just on the product or the service, it's on, are they good for women? And if you take women's purchasing power, and if you take the talent hunt for women in terms of the competition around the world in the emerging markets, or you take all the other things the data shows us today, it is a smart business proposition. So in this construct, women are seen as partners critical to every part of a company's value chain, from marketing, sales, distribution, to R&D, to management. Coca-Cola has created a major initiative called 5x20 to create 5 million new female entrepreneurs by 2020. Why? Because they get it. They know that this is part of going global, if you will. This is a good business proposition, and it has enormous social value. So what they have done is looked at their corporate value chain, and they're including more women in every area of operations, training them as business owners to market and sell products. And when you think of that global value chain and others even indirectly associated with the company, this has a vast impact on taking women who may be selling 2 or 3 bottles of Coca-Cola and some water in a village to really raising them up over time with training and access to becoming really viable entrepreneurs, where they're no longer micro, but they're on their way to small. And that's where growth really happens. The other big area for companies in a growing way is integrating their supply chains. And they want more and more to do their buying from women-owned businesses. Walmart has an enormous initiative called the Women's Economic Empowerment Initiative. And just on the buying side, there's a training side to this, there are other pieces to this, but on the buying side, they are committed to exceeding their current levels by $20 billion more to buy from women-owned businesses in the United States. Now imagine what that does to the income of those businesses. And similar, they are doubling their purchasing around the world. So what this conference is all about is the recognition that economic activity takes place in an increasing global economy. And I salute everybody who has brought you to this point, because this is the economy that you are living in and that you will be active in ways beyond your student years. It means greater increases in trade openness. It means technical transformation. It means the rapid exchange of information. And for some, this will mean greater equality and possibility. For others, it will mean lagging further behind, unless the gender gap in economic opportunity, in leadership, in growing capacity, in access to technology is truly closed. And this is something we must all be a part of working to address. Nick Kristof, whom I'm sure some of you read in the New York Times, has said that the great moral challenge of the 21st century is gender equality. It is true. It is also the best investment that can be made for peace, prosperity, and progress. So I hope each of you will continue to be champions in this space, to act in it, to grow your careers in it, to bring that kind of women's economic leadership, both in the United States and the world, because it is not just the right thing to do, and that is fundamentally important, but it is also the smart and strategic thing to do. It is good for the bottom line, and it gives us enormous social value. So with that, we will close.